Hey, we're here with the Bike Skills Project in Barrie, Ontario, and we're just getting ready to go ride. And what I want to talk about today is just what we're sort of doing to make sure that our bike's ready for the ride. We're not going to, less likely to have breakdowns on the trail, less likely for things to go wrong, injuries and stuff like that. So the big thing that I try and get people on is checking their tire pressure with their pump. Before pretty much every ride, especially with the tubeless stuff, there's going to be a little seeping overnight, and depending on the terrain and stuff, we're going to want to keep track of what we're using on different terrain, for racing or whatever, and just sort of keeping track of that like you would any metric. A nice digital gauge is another thing you can sort of put on your Christmas wish list, just so you know between different pumps and stuff, there's always going to be variety, whereas the digital pump's going to really tell you, 23 is 23. So that's our tire pressure. The other thing we want to do is generally before most rides you're going to lube, and quickly on that is just inside the chain, on the inside, so against the gears, we're going to want to apply that lube as we sort of rotate through, one rotation, and then I like to give it a couple buzzes through and then just wipe it down. And when we're wiping it, you're focusing more on this outside bit, just to keep the chain clean, get rid of any lube on the outside so that we don't get a lot of dirt in there. That's going to keep your bike running smooth, help you get up those hills a lot easier. So that's our lube for our drivetrain. Then the other thing we're going to check is just make sure generally that our wheels, discs are, not rubbing or anything from the car ride. It's not a hard fix, but we want to just make sure that, before we get out there and out and meet people, that it's not rubbing. And then we also want to make sure either our quick release or our through axle is nice and tight. So knowing how that works and just making sure that that wheel's in there tight is going to give you a lot of confidence. On the trail, same thing on the rear, just making sure that that skewer is, pretty tight on there. Okay, so that's our quick release. And then brakes, like I say, is just making sure again on the rear that again that disc is not rubbing. One little thing I found is a lot of times if it did get squeezed on the trail, what you can do is take the bike, if it was rubbing here on the rear, and what you can do is sort of undo it and just move the disc very gently because we don't want to bend the disc, but just sort of push those pads back. And then retighten that, and a lot of times you'll make sure that that isn't rubbing. The other thing you want to make sure if it is rubbing is that the wheel's actually in straight, especially with the quick release skewer. You can get it in and it can be tightened in crooked. So a lot of times just making sure I use my chest on the seat and just apply that downward pressure to make sure that the disc is going to roll nice and smooth. So that's our brakes. Aside from that, just doing a general bolt check fairly regularly is important. So things like your seats, so that the seat doesn't bust. So just making sure that that's tight. You don't have to necessarily move the bolt, but make sure that that's nice and snug. From there, that's pretty much our main safety issues and what's going to affect us on the trail. The only other thing I want to make sure is that you have lots of tubes, all your tools, so in your pockets and stuff, and all this stuff becomes routine after you do it for quite a while, but just making sure you're always carrying it no matter how short the ride is, so that you have the chance to fix it if you do have something, go wrong on the trail and you're not walking home. So hopefully that helps you get ready and out on the trail and have fun and stay safe.